Next slide, please. Dr. Richard Cahoon, he was past board of directors in AUTM, president Bioproperty Strategy Group, and head of technology transfer, Cornell University. Dr. Cahoon is adjunct professor at Cornell University, specializes in tech transfer, IP management, and commercialization. With over 30 years of experience, he has advised governments, universities, and global organizations on innovation ecosystems, IP strategy, venture creation, and technology-driven economic development in over 25 countries. Over to you, Dr. Cahoon. You can share your slides and start the session. Thank you.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Pradna. And thank all of you for attending. Just before I put my slides up, I'm really pleased to see how many attendees we have. This really bodes well for the creation, the further establishment of the innovation ecosystem in India. And I was also thinking that in my experience of watching my colleagues in various stages of their careers in technology transfer, myself included, from beginning when I started to where I am today, and watching colleagues of various stages, I am reminded about how some people just fall in love with this profession, how it gets in your blood, and you don't want to do anything else. It's just so exciting, interesting, fulfilling. You feel like you're having an impact on your institution, on society. It's something that you can feel really good about. Some of you will get you probably are really good at this. Some of you will get even better, and you will really thrive in this profession. Some of you will decide it's not for you. It's not the easiest way to make a living. It is exciting and interesting. It has its challenges, of course, and anything excellent is hard. So anyway, welcome to you all. Happy to be here. I'm going to now start my slides. And this, as I was skimming over it a little this morning, it's morning for me, as you probably know. It's just a little after 8 a.m. I was looking at my slides, and it just reminded me of the number of years that I experienced all of this. So what you're going to see in the next couple of hours is a distillation of my experience of 20 years running a tech transfer office, running the tech transfer office at Cornell for 20 years as a tech manager, which we're going to talk a lot about, responsible for shepherding individual technologies, technology portfolios, as well as running the office and everything that means. And so you're going to get my perspective, 20 years of being immersed at a U.S. university. That said, since leaving the Cornell Tech Transfer Office in 2009, I have advised, it's probably hundreds of technology transfer offices, officers, directors, managers in many institutions around the world. So what I'm giving you is, I think, tried and true. My experience, of course, you're going to have to filter it through your own experience and adapt it to your own needs. So let's go ahead and we'll get started with the slides. Pradna gave me a nice quick introduction. Right now, I'm particularly happy about the uh, I'm teaching two courses at Cornell. One in our College of Ag and Life Sciences called Invention and IP Management, largely focuses on life sciences, agriculture, biological kinds of inventions, but also other technologies. And I've taught that course for 17 years, and now the new course, first time teaching it in our College of Art, Architecture, and Planning, and it involves the intersection of design, art, and invention, which is a new experience for me. Um, so we're going to talk today about the basic elements of the Technology Transfer Office, functions, the basic functions and activities of a TTO, and my view of how to build and operate an effective, and I emphasize effective and sustainable. I've seen technology transfer offices that are not effective, and I think there are some that are not sustainable. I think we need both. And so I wouldn't do this technology transfer function if it didn't have real impact. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today is how to have a real impact on a sustainable basis. So here's the typical model. So if we get on the same page, the typical model in which the technology transfer office, and the model has a separate, distinct office function um, at a public sector, and I'm talking primarily about a public sector research institution. Now, I know some of you are from the private sector, and I'm delighted that you are here. Um, I think certainly many of the things I'm going to be talking about are as applicable to you in the private sector, in a company, in a startup, in an existing company. The emphasis of today's lecture is on public sector research institutions. When something doesn't apply directly to you in a company, what I would advise is to listen and learn, because what it makes you as a private sector uh, participant is really good at partnering with public sector research institutions in this process of technology transfer, which we will talk more about. So the Technology Transfer Office is responsible for IP policy implementation. We're the ones in the trenches, as it were. We're the ones that are implementing it. We're not the ones that create it, although we advise on it typically. Certainly the director should have input into the institutional IP policy, but it's up to the office and the professionals to implement and to monitor the IP policy at the institution. And where the process really begins in earnest is the invention disclosure process. That's really where we're starting to harvest the wheat to make the bread of deals and technology transfer to the private sector from the public sector. Relationship management with inventors. Nothing is more important, really, than that. The inventors are the ones that are creating the opportunities. We need them. We love them. They are the source of all good things for us in our world, and we manage the relationship in very careful, thoughtful ways. Um, we are responsible for invention evaluation and triage, and you will hear me talk about this in many different ways and at different times, how important it is for a tech transfer office to engage in technology or invention evaluation and triage. By triage, I mean the process of selection of those inventions which are potentially viable, They may be very risky, but they are still viable. And the statistics at Cornell, I know the statistics very well at Cornell, and they reflect the reality at most US universities. And I think it's a good standard to follow. And that is that while I was at Cornell, director of the Tech Transfer Office for 20 years, we received 3,000 invention disclosures, and we pursued, in terms of time and money, patent applications, etc., just around 50%. That means 50% were not viable, and we did not pursue those. I can always tell a lot about a technology transfer office. My experience is going into a tech transfer office saying, "How are you? Nice to meet you. How's the weather? Oh, nice office. How many invention disclosures did you get last year?" And they tell me, "Oh, we got 35. Okay, good number, good number. Where did they come from? Which colleges? Which disciplines? Okay, very good. How many of those did you file patent applications?" And they look at you with a funny expression and they go, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, how many of the 35 did you file on?" They go, "Well, all of them, of course." Therein lies a problem. I know we've got a, a growing problem, if it isn't already, and that is when you're filing 100% of your invention disclosures, that's a recipe for gradual implosion and failure. And so invention evaluation triage essential. Obviously, patent filing, prosecution, and maintenance, ongoing management, and eventually even into infringement management. This is one of our core responsibilities as an office and as professionals. Managing, we're the smartest ones in the room when it comes to the details of IP management. Now, that said, of course, we are typically working with outside patent lawyers, agents, specialists, etc. So it's not like we know and have to know absolutely every tiny little detail about the latest twist and turn of the patent cooperation treaty. We just know how to manage the process for our inventions, our inventors, and other types of IP management. Uh, uh, Trade secrets, if your institution can philosophically and policy-wise handle trade secrets, how does one manage trade secrets, copyrights, trademarks, plant breeder rights, all of these different kinds of IP if they relate to a particular invention. Another function that the Tech Transfer Office is responsible for, and that is the activity of technology marketing, promoting technologies, looking for partners, and this very proactive partnering activity. And we're going to talk more about that, about how one creates an effective tech transfer office by having a certain way of thinking and activities that you proactively engage in. Here's where we could spend a lot of time talking about license negotiation, drafting, and signing. Now, we're not going to talk about this today, but the question does come up. Why do we talk about licensing? Because in the US, I'll start with that, we learned that thou shalt not sell their patentable or really any of our IP in the US, and I think this is the standard model around the world, although there are exceptions. We, as public sector research institutions, never sell. We do not transfer ownership of our patents to anyone. We retain ownership. We license. Now, we can license exclusively all uses and worldwide, so we can grant our commercial partners everything they need to invest in, develop, commercialize, sell, maintain, and develop our technologies as they are embodied in products and services. So we engage in licensing only. That is our only process for transfer of technologies. So for those of you who are engaged in selling your IP, my recommendation is do not do it. We're not going to talk more about it, but take it from me and really anyone that you talk to, and I think in the US and the UK and Australia, other well-developed tech transfer communities, do not sell. And you can give your private sector partners everything they need through the license transaction. Uh, Contract monitoring and management. This is a good problem to have. When you start seeing more licenses, you need to manage them. You need to monitor them and you need to manage them, because unmanaged licenses are a problem waiting to happen. I know because we learned the hard way that if you don't actively monitor and manage your signed license agreements, they become problems. Okay, so you have to take effort, invest in the system to do that. And another good problem to have is revenue collection and distribution. The Tech Transfer Office is responsible for receiving the monies that licensees are responsible for paying. License fees, patent expense reimbursements, royalties, all of those monies flow into the Tech Transfer Office. And the Tech Transfer Office has to keep track, and most of our tech transfer offices are responsible for dividing up the shares, the different revenue sharing. Most these days, almost all institutions have an IP policy with a revenue sharing model. Now, this is an interesting little distinction between the public sector and the private sector. The public sector research institution almost always has a significant share to go to the inventors. In the US, it's typically a one-third, one-third, one-third model, one-third to the inventors, one-third to the tech transfer function, and one-third to the university, to be spread out as the president and the leadership decide. Private sector inventors typically don't get a share. That can depend, of course, company by company, but in my experience, most companies, they don't pay inventors anything extra. They might get a bonus or a pat on the back or a promotion, but they normally don't get a firm share of revenues like the public sector inventor does. IP policy troubleshooting. It is the Tech Transfer Office that oftentimes is the first to observe failures or flaws or inconsistencies in the IP policy. It's the office that will raise these issues and bring them to the policy governance system. At Cornell, that meant an IP policy committee appointed by the vice provost for research. And that committee met on a regular basis and was responsible for addressing any issues, problems, failures, inconsistencies that were brought to it by anyone, but particularly by the Tech Transfer Office. So some more basic elements of a tech transfer office. First of all, sound IP policy is the foundation. I often say that if you're going to build a beautiful house or a beautiful building or a very highly efficient factory, you have to build a foundation. It's not beautiful, it's not sexy, it's not what we all look at and go, oh wow, isn't that beautiful? But if you're an engineer and if you're an architect, you know how beautiful a foundation is and how necessary, because if you don't have a good foundation, the building is in jeopardy from day one. And so that's what the IP policy is. It's the foundation, and we need a good, strong one. And so we could spend a lot of time talking about what are the elements of sound IP policy. A couple of key things I'll just say right now. One is the institution should own the patentable inventions made by its personnel in the course of their duties. And number two, there should be a revenue sharing scheme, which I just talked about. a revenue sharing scheme, which gives the inventor a significant share. As I said, in the US, that's 1/3 of all net. Uh, Technology transfer personnel. These the what's critical is having an office that is staffed with the right positions. And we're going to talk about tech managers. They're kind of the key to the personnel and to the function of the tech transfer office in the model that we use. The tech manager is the key person, kind of like the quarterback, if you will. Sorry, you guys who don't watch football, American football, you may have known or heard about the quarterback as that person who receives the ball at the snap and kind of organizes things. Everybody kind of revolves. Doesn't mean they're the most important person, but they're kind of the pivotal actor. And that's the model we use is the tech manager, which we'll talk more about. Tech managers, supporters and I'll tell you more about how offices evolve in terms of the different functions. But you have to have certain skills. Obviously, you have to have people in the tech management role, people who have some science and tech background, more or less deep. These days, more and more, we're seeing in the US a minimum requirement of a master's degree, and in some cases, a PhD. Legal experience, legal knowledge, at least enough to be functional in the IP world, contract management, contract understanding of contracts, of the legalities of contracts, business experience, business negotiations, the fundamentals of business practice, of what does profitability mean, what is the cost of goods sold, and of course, a lot of these things can be learned by experience, and we like experienced people that we hire, but we don't always have that. And frankly, we're happy to have new comers to the profession that we can help them learn the process. How do you find these people? That's really important. You can't. So in the ye olde days of tech transfer in the US, they thought anybody could do tech transfer, and they learned that is not true. They, meaning the universities that had an obligation to do tech transfer, looked around and said, oh, we have to have a tech transfer office. Why don't you're handling contracts, you come over and do it. And sometimes that worked, and oftentimes it did not. You have to have people with the right attitude, mindset. We'll talk more about that. So you need to find those people, and when you find them, you want to keep them. And that's important that you develop a way to bring in the right talent and keep them engaged, keep them happy with their job. It's a hard job, and so there are things that we need to do to make sure that we maximize our retention. That has been hard over the last, since COVID, for some reason. It's happened in a lot of industries and a lot of professions, a lot of turnover. We've seen a lot of turnover in the tech transfer profession since COVID. Sizing the staff, always a key question. Do you want dozens and dozens if you're a small office? No, you don't. You couldn't afford it, and it's not necessary. We have a rule of thumb that we used, and I think still is viable, which is that in the tech manager model, where we assign an invention to a tech manager, and that tech manager is responsible for shepherding the invention through all of its stages. We have a rule of thumb which says that a tech manager should not be responsible for more than 2 new invention disclosures each month. Okay, so that means each tech manager shouldn't have to work on more or be assigned more than, on average, 2 disclosures per month. That means 24 per year. That's kind of it's a rule of thumb. Sometimes it's higher, and often it will be, especially in early stages. We can manage it if it's higher. It's preferable if it's lower. There are ways to mitigate the process. We'll talk about it, to manage uh, mm, tech transfer or caseloads. Uh, the director is basic. First question I always ask when I'm talking about technology transfer for a new institution, and I'm asking them what kind of an operation they have. Do you have a director? Are they full-time? And if the answer is no, I don't have a director, that's a basic problem. You have to have a director who can coordinate, manage, strategize, uh, and if you don't have it, that office is not going to function well. Somebody has to act as the tech transfer office director. Are they full time? Often in startups, they are not. Typical model in universities in particular, the leadership says, okay, professor, I know you're busy, you're teaching, and you've got your research and you're advising students, but I also want you to run our tech transfer office. And they do it because that's what faculty do when they're asked to do something by the president of the university. Um, how successful is that? In the short term, it can be okay. Faculty can manage because they're usually quite competent, um, but it almost always requires skills that they don't have and has expectations and requirements that they can't meet. And so it's at best, it's a very short-term solution. You need to have a director who is dedicated to the function of tech transfer. Tech managers, and I mentioned this role. Some of you, I think, and maybe many of you are completely aware of what this is. The tech manager is that person responsible for managing the coordination of all aspects of the invention process. Uh, Administrative and infrastructure management. So um, assistants who handle record keeping, invention disclosure, record keeping, uh, staff that help with correspondence, staff who help with as the office grows with more and more contracts. You have to have contract management, accounts receivable. So the financial side of expenses and receivables and distributions. So that's an area you have to have it. Um, and it's a whole subject of conversation as to how to refine the ideal roles and number of staff. Um, operations for the tech transfer office, first and foremost, invention disclosure system. Uh, Having a system, establishing a system, and operating it so that we capture all the inventions made on campus. That's the ideal. Will we capture 100% of them? Maybe not, but eventually I would say the great majority, 97% of them flow into the system. You need to have a nice big funnel that effectively, efficiently captures inventions and captures the key information, brings them into the office, records them, tracks them, and manages them. IP management, of course, as we talked about, the process of filing, working typically with outside patent specialists. Um, as offices grow, sometimes people bring in that resource. Um, that's a debatable approach. When I was at Cornell, we never had in-house lawyers, and I was happy with that. We just had several key lawyers that we would go to, depending upon which technology area. And so we would manage our IP counsel. Now Cornell actually has a lawyer in their technology licensing office. However, that person doesn't prosecute very many cases. Mostly they manage the law firms and the lawyers that work for Cornell. Tech marketing, as I mentioned, the promotion of inventions that we are in the process of patenting or have patented or have other forms of IP or biological property. You will hear me talk about bioproperty. For those of us in the life sciences, that can be a very, very significant component of our asset. I call it the property control position. The PCP, the property control position, is that umbrella term that covers the what I call the suite of assets: patent, trade secret, copyright, trademark, whatever it is. And each technology is a little unique. It has its own set, and sometimes bioproperty, cell lines, microbial cultures, plants, for those of you who are in the plant world, plants and their parts. License negotiation, as we talked about, nothing more important than that. The art of arriving at a win-win license agreement with our private sector partners, and then monitoring of contracts, which I mentioned. And then, of course, basic elements, good practices. You can have all of these elements, and if you don't have good practices, obviously, you're not going to have an effective and sustainable TTO. So the key role of tech manager. Not everybody, not all offices have a tech manager model. Most do, and most, if it's not exactly like this, it's a minor variant of it. I really haven't seen any other models that I think work as well. So the tech manager is key. This is the person responsible for shepherding an invention through the entire tech transfer process. It doesn't mean they do everything. It just means they are responsible for the coordination, the facilitation. They are its key champion in the organization, in the tech transfer office. They play the role of, first of all, well, let's go through some of their typical attributes. In a typical operation, the tech manager normally has a science and engineering education and background, not always. And I'll explain that, there's a growing appreciation for tech transfer in other domains that aren't strictly science and engineering. But most tech transfer people have some science and engineering education. Big plus to have some business experience. These days, I think, I would say almost a requirement that certainly anyone who is at a mid-level should have had some business experience, whether that's in a big company or in a startup or a medium-sized company. Having some experience in the business environment is, I think, a huge advantage for a tech manager. Good people skills. Tech managers have to deal with lots of different kinds of personalities, particularly with inventors. Inventors can have unusually well, personalities that are maybe a little difficult to work with. When you're in a universities, you have big egos to deal with. You have to be diplomatic. You have to know how to manage people without them even knowing you're managing them, and doing it in a way that's diplomatic and careful. And you got to manage relationships with a number of different entities. You got to negotiate. You got to problem solve. It's best done by people who have people skills. And if they don't have people skills, that's a challenge to be a tech manager. I think the ideal tech manager is analytical and creative. That is, they use both sides of their mind. Some of you are, uh, you know about this concept of the two minds, the right brain, left brain. The left brain is analytical and linear thinking. It's what we rely upon. Those of us who are scientists, engineers. My background is biology and bioprocess engineering, natural resources. So I tend to lean towards the left brain. But the other side, the right side, that's the creative, think outside the box, nonlinear, maybe more holistic in certain ways, more aesthetic. I know when I start saying some of these things, I kind of wince a little bit about what the two minds do. But bottom line here is that it's great to find people who tap into both sides of their mind. This profession, tech transfer, is is really ideal for those of us who can be both analytical and creative. And we'll talk more about that especially we'll do this when I'm there in India. We'll talk about how the tech transfer professional, the tech manager, can bring and should bring so much creativity to the process that I used to think, and people frequently think that that the creative process ends with the invention being made and submitted to the tech transfer office. What in an ideal world, when you get tech transfer tech managers who are using both sides of their brain, then we're bringing additional creativity to the process. We're adding to the invention. We're adding value to the invention. We're helping it blossom. So we'll talk more about that. I'll tell you about terms like what is lateral inventiveness, and the level of creativity that the tech manager can bring to the process is just, there's no limit to it. And so we'll talk more about that when I see you in person in June. Some of the attributes of a tech manager: to be optimistic. We see the glass as half full, not half empty. Important that the tech manager is proactive, takes action, takes steps. If I walk through a tech transfer office and I see a tech manager just sitting there, well, I don't mind meditation. I think meditation is important. And I think reflection and thinking deeply, those are important skills, they're important activities for us. That said, there's no getting around, you need to take action. And if I find people who are just sitting all the time and waiting for something to happen, that's a recipe for lack of success. Okay, so I want proactive people in the tech transfer, in the tech manager role. I want them to be doers. I want them to come to work every day and go, what can I do today to make something happen with any one of my technologies? Even if it's just one, but I've got several, so I better see what I can do for each of them. I want to make things happen. Tech managers are people that make things happen. Now, I'm sure you know people who make things happen. And then there are other people that, somehow they manage to never make things happen. That's human nature. If you are a tech manager, that is your job, is to make things happen. Okay. And if you aren't making things happen, step back and start thinking about how you can make things happen. And that reminds me of a conversation I had with a tech transfer director at another institution. And he said this to me in a way. He was asking about a person who he had worked in my office and was applying in his office as a tech transfer, a tech manager. And he asked me about this person. And he said, in my experience, there are two kinds of people in the world. There are those who can do, and there are those who can't do. And I said, yeah, okay, I buy that. There's can do's and can't do's in the world. And he said, in my experience, there are two kinds of can do people in the world. And I said, and I started, this was amusing to me. Okay, what are the two kinds of can do people? He goes, those who can do and those who will do. And he said to me, is this fellow who's applying for a job here, is he can do? And I said, yes, he is. And he said, is he will do? And I said, that's a harder question. Because they're different. There are people who can do. We got a lot of people who can do, but will they do it? Right? Tech managers are can do and will do people. Okay. Those are the people you hire, and those are the people you keep. They can do and they will do. All right. So in a typical model, this tech manager has what I call turnkey responsibility for each assigned invention disclosure. So when the inventions come in, now the different, if you have a really small office, then there's no choice. It just the next one goes to me. If I'm just the single, sometimes we have tech transfer offices, only one person. There's no choice. You do it. But if there are two of you, then you have to decide. If a very small office, two people, okay, you take the next one, or I'll take this one because I'm more knowledgeable about plant pathology. But you get assigned a technology. It is now yours to manage. You are assigned that invention disclosure, and you have responsibility as a tech manager for shepherding it through the entire process. Number one, and nothing more important than the primary relationship with the inventor is your responsibility. I tell all my staff, when you are assigned an invention disclosure, you find out who the inventors are, you find out who the key inventor is. Maybe you don't know, you send them all an email, you try to reach them, you find out who the key inventor is. If you know, that's great. You call them, you email them right away. Do not wait. This is one of the little secrets of being a successful tech transfer office. You don't wait 2 weeks to contact the inventor saying, got your invention. Thank you very much. I'm going to be reviewing it. Let's schedule a time to get together. Now, if you don't know the person, you want to do that right away. If you do know the person, you should still be responsive, but if they've run through the process before, you can be a little bit more relaxed. They know you'll contact them. But the worst thing that can happen, and I see this happen with tech transfer offices, inventors send you the invention disclosure and then they never hear from you, or they hear from you so so much later than they should, and they worry, and their confidence in you plummets. Okay, so respond to them quickly. You are responsible for actively marketing the technology. You're also responsible for evaluating the technology. And then once it's selected, then you're responsible for actively marketing the technology. You are the primary contact with potential licensees. You're the one that negotiates and drafts the license contract. Now, there are some models I've seen where the tech manager does the interaction with the inventor and works with the IP lawyer, but isn't the one that does the marketing and the interaction with the private sector, the potential partner. So some offices separate these functions. I think that's not a good idea. That's not what we do. We have one key person, that's the tech manager, who coordinates all this activity. And the tech manager remains the ombudsman. The ombudsman is a problem solver. So even after the contract is signed with the licensee, the tech manager moves on to other unlicensed technologies, but remains to be a problem solver for that agreement, for the parties of agreements, licenses that he or she has negotiated, and and of course signature authority. The tech manager may or may not have that. In my office, I was director. I had signature authority. I had 9 tech managers. They did not have signature authority for license agreements. I had that. So we had to communicate closely about the negotiation process. So here's a little graphic that shows the different entities that the tech manager in our model, the model that I'm describing for you here today, the tech manager has interactions with inventors, as we've been talking about, interactions with various administrators, department chairs, um, maybe higher leadership to deans on occasion, and staff, um, patent lawyers, patent agents, industrial advisory contacts, potential licensees. We hope there's a lot of contact going on with potential licensees, maybe the general counsel office in your institution. Usually that's done primarily between the director and the in-house legal office. Research contract office, signature authorities, whoever they may be, the tech manager needs to be interacting with this. If the tech manager doesn't have signature authority for signing a contract, a license, they have to interact with whoever does, and that's typically the director, um, but maybe others. And entrepreneurs, more and more and more. In fact, we talked about this a couple of days ago about the growing importance of startups. And so I think we would all agree, those of us who've been doing this for some time, and those of you who are new to it, probably already know that startups are key to eventual success of the tech transfer function. Therefore, we need to have entrepreneurs. They're the key, they're the rate limiting factor. You need to develop a core group of a pool of entrepreneurial talent. So you get to know them, you cultivate them. And of course, licensees that have signed licenses, they're now engaged in developing your inventions. You stay in touch with them to some degree. License contract administrators in the tech transfer office, and investors. Another area that we could talk about, that this is something that maybe largely the directors should be responsible for, maintaining good relationships, building relationships with investors in our startups. But the tech manager, especially as they develop their expertise and they become more experienced, they should be also engaging with investors. And then economic development contacts. You'll hear me talk a lot about being engaged. The tech transfer office should be engaged with the local, regional innovation ecosystem. And that grows and grows in importance over time. At Cornell now, we have a thriving and rather extensive innovation ecosystem in our city of Ithaca, small city of about 40,000 people. It has become a thriving hub of startups. We are actively engaged. Cornell is actively engaged in these startups, and Cornell is involved actively with economic development entities and individuals in the region, in the state. So the typical model, tech manager has turnkey responsibility for each assigned invention disclosure. There are other models and variations, not my preference, but people use it, and if it works for them, great. Some people use a committee approach where you don't have one person managing a technology, you have several. I think that's a recipe for miscommunication, missed opportunities. I think it's not a good model. Now, a hybrid of this, I think having tech managers responsible for an individual invention is the way to go. That said, an IP committee can be a useful function. Depends upon how they're used. Oftentimes in early stages of tech transfer offices, an IP committee will be formed, typically faculty who are interested in the process, and the tech manager and the director can rely upon them for informal advisory input, helping make decisions about the viability of technologies, and also giving the tech transfer manager and director some support when they make difficult decisions like, no, we don't think we're going to pursue that one. And you will have disappointment. Sometimes the disappointed individuals have a lot of power and influence. They might be higher level faculty, they might be a dean. And if you say no to them, that can be challenging. And so having a committee of their peers who also agree with you can be very helpful. politically and just sort of for the moral support, shall we call it. Um, and there is another model which is a variant of this tech manager. In my office, we had the tech manager, which in the American football analogy, the tech manager is the quarterback oftentimes, but the director of the office is the coach. So the coach gives overall guidance. The director gives overall guidance, kind of strategic advice and approach, and what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? But the tech manager is the one that implements. Um, so that's the tech transfer team model, which, as I say, we used. And the key is to have really, find the right people for your tech managers and then get out of their way and let them be successful. My job as director was to make the situation as conducive to their tech manager success as I could. Um, Another variant of the tech manager, something I discovered after really years, I would say probably 12 years in, I realized that there were um, allies, or I could create tech manager deputies, to use a term there, where I would find people in departments, department chairs or administrators, who really like the process of tech transfer and will be helpful for you. And you can bring them in, get them engaged. They'll do it because they want to do it, and they can be very helpful. They can be your eyes and ears in a department. I learned over time this is a really valuable set of associates, and you want to cultivate that over time. I wish I'd learned it earlier. And you can do this in find your institutional communication group, people who put out the newsletters for colleges. For example, in the College of Veterinary Medicine at Cornell, they put out a regular magazine 4 times a year, and it's got all kinds of stories. Find people there who are interested in the IP tech transfer process. They will be helpful. They love the stories. They will help you in your promotion and in your development and spreading the word on campus and spreading the word off campus. Okay. Um, in a small tech transfer office, the director is also a tech manager. Now, even in a bigger office, typically the director can also manage cases. I did. Even though I was director, I started out as assistant director. Within 2 years, I was associate director, and then a few years after that, I was director. So I always had director responsibilities, but I also always had cases that I was managing. And so, how do you do that? It's a challenge, but you can get good at it. Now, in a small office, there's no getting around the fact that if you're going to be a director, and you have to have a director, as I said earlier, you have to have a director. Um, but that director also has to manage cases. In a large office, the director is typically not a tech manager, or if they are a tech manager, they don't handle very many cases, maybe just special cases, maybe only the case that the dean has submitted invention disclosure. Um, but normally, directors, you don't want to have to rely upon them being tech managers. Um, Now, about the tech manager role, one of the things that I'm a believer that, we can call them tech managers, but manager really isn't the right word, but we don't really know what the other term is. I'm going to give you some here that are kind of amusing, but I think they're actually more accurate, because manager doesn't really convey the creative, visionary, and entrepreneurial aspect of this. And these are the kind of people you want in this role. They're more like a conductor of a symphony, right? They're orchestrating all the violins and the wind instruments, and the inventor and the inventor's laboratory team, and the IP lawyer, and your work with potential, we'll talk about commercialization allies. So you're a conductor, right? Or an impresario. You're making things happen. You're pulling things together. You're connecting dots. In some ways, you might be the initial entrepreneur. I I was an entrepreneur when I started at Cornell in 1990. I had experience as an entrepreneur, founding and running a startup. So I brought that mentality to a lot of my technologies. I'm going to create a sort of the beginnings of a startup without it really being a startup, but ready to bring an entrepreneur on board. Okay, I'm the champion. I'm with the inventor. The two of us are champions of the technology. I'm a catalyst, and those of you who are chemists will know that they'll know the specifics about a catalyst. Catalyst means they're not part of the reaction, they just make the reaction go faster, more to completion. And there's very little catalyst. You only need a few molecules of a catalyst to make a lot of the reaction happen. And that's the same with us. We don't have a lot of us to go around. We don't have a lot of time. So we have to be catalytic in our actions and in our thinking. We are the initiator. We come up with ideas about how the trajectory for with which we're going to follow for development and partnering with our technology, and we get it started. We think about the trajectory, we think about the direction, and we start that process moving. We're the facilitator. We're always trying to make the connections between our inventor and potential partners or commercialization allies, which are entities that will help you. They're not licensees, but they will help you. You're the architect. You're designing a lot of this. How this all is, you're the planner. Okay, you're the creator of this business development activity. Okay, so you can see you're bringing a lot more to it than meets the eye. And once inventors begin to realize the value you bring, the creativity you bring, the ability to cause inventions to blossom under your nurturing, they will love you, and pretty soon they will keep coming back to you, and other inventors will want to reach out to you. You will be really successful. You'll also be busy, but that's that's a good thing. Um, so the key word that defines the role of the tech manager, I think, is business development. I realized years after doing this for a long time, I realized if you had to pick one job title, one responsibility that encompasses all of this creativity and this action, this pro action, it's business development. So if you don't know what that means, I suggest you go out and you talk to people who are doing business development in their companies, read about business development. Therein lies, I think, the attitude, the activities that will pay off for you ultimately in terms of tech transfer success. So the tech manager orchestrates these kinds of relationships, right? So obviously the inventor and the tech manager, that's the key partnership. And then we have the IP lawyer playing their key role in terms of helping us perfect the patent asset that becomes, at the end of the day, probably the most important part of all this. And then a licensee, once we find a partner and we negotiate that deal. So the tech manager is orchestrating all of these relationships between licensee and inventor, between IP lawyer and licensee, between licensee and IP lawyer and inventor. Okay, so the tech manager is responsible for coordination of all of this. Um, but I wanted to mention something here. I say this. I don't know that anybody else. I don't know that you'll hear this from anyone else. But I've been saying it long enough that now it's kind of getting some attention around the world. But and maybe you guys know this, and wouldn't surprise me. That is, who's the true client of the tech manager? So when you're managing technologies, when you're managing relationship with inventors, and you're managing all these different activities of the tech manager, who is the true client? And there's so many clients to choose from. There's the inventor, there's your boss, if you're a tech manager, the boss's boss, the senior leadership of an institution. They're your licensees, your potential licensees, your signed licensees. There's the public, because we're always trying to do the public good. There's economic development people. Who's your client? And one day it struck me, your true client is the technology. And I realized that if I act in the best interest of the technology, always everyone wins, right? So when you're wondering, oh, do I do what's best for the inventor, or what's best for local economic development, or for my boss, or just do what's best for the technology, and everyone will be happy. Okay. Um, Now, that said, I think also your primary client's probably the inventor, but and everybody else is a very important, but maybe a little bit secondary to inventor. I love inventors. I love their inventions, and I really try hard to be their best friend and their best advisor and counselor. But between all of us, the technology is your key client. Its success is your goal. And if you fail, it can't help the world. Now, I don't want to put too much pressure on you. This is a fun job. You can make it fun and interesting, exciting. It's challenging. But I've always said to myself, what if I'm holding an invention that could save the world? Now, I know I'm being a little bit, this is a little bit over the top dramatic, but it's the way I conceived of my role is that any one of my inventions could be something could have a major impact on the planet, the environment, on humans, on well-being for all of the above. A huge improvement. And I dare not fail. My job is to make sure that I do whatever I can to make sure that invention will see the light of day and will be developed and disseminated. And how could I fail? By not doing anything. Now, don't worry about getting things wrong. That's, just do. You know, you know, be a little cautious about some things, of course. You want to, you don't want to make huge mistakes, but don't worry too much about perfection. The growth mindset, which says, yeah, we got to live with some errors. Believe me, over the years, I made mistakes. That's okay. Uh, you learn from your mistakes, and you will fail forward faster. Okay. Uh, but keep doing, keep trying, okay? And always look out for the technology's best interest. Here are some recent trends in tech transfer organization. How much time have I got, Pradna?
Yeah, Dr. Cahoon, I was just going to check with you if we are good to break for 5 minutes of quiz, or you want to
Let
finish
me,
two couple of more slides.
yeah, let me finish two more slides and then we'll
Yeah,
break. Yeah.
sure, sure.
Okay. Thank you. So here are some recent trends in tech transfer organization that I've seen. One is the rise of technology marketing assistants. This is a reflection on how important tech marketing is. You can have the best technologies in the world, the best inventors in the world, the best IP in the world, everything great, but if you don't proactively market technologies, proactively and creatively, you're trying different routes and different approaches, et cetera, you won't be as successful as you should be. And one of the things we've realized is that tech managers don't have enough time to do all the tech marketing that they could do and should do, that would be optimal. So there are now tech marketing assistants. We had a little bit of that tech marketing assistantship in my office. We would get students. Students wanted to help. They wanted to learn. And so we would get them involved in tech marketing. Now at Cornell, they have dedicated personnel, tech marketing assistants. I believe every tech manager in the Cornell, it's called Cornell Technology Licensing, CTL. Every tech manager at CTL has a tech marketing assistant whose job is to market technology. Okay, so that's um, a change, a logical evolution from when I was running the office. And here's another, I think, a logical, and I really like this, startup specialist. These are people on staff whose job it is to do whatever they can to facilitate the creation, the recruiting of entrepreneurs, the cultivation of potential startups, the connection of entrepreneurs to startup opportunities. Um, I created something called the Venture Vision Summary, where I would take technologies that I thought had the potential for startups, and I would create a little pre-business summary, the business opportunity, and I would use that to recruit entrepreneurs. You could do a lot more to create startups if you have someone who has the time, the energy, and the creativity and the knowledge. Um, and here's another thing that's starting to happen. We're seeing a lot of outreach to not what I call non-traditional sources of inventions, like in the arts and architecture. Like I said, now I'm teaching a course in our College of Art, Architecture and Planning, and it's a whole world of people over there. The architects over there, they don't think about inventions very much. And now I'm bringing this awareness to them through teaching of my course, and I'm finding inventions. Yes, I've been finding that architects are inventors. Yes, they are. And so there's a lot that we can start doing there. Also in music, design, etc. So this is a growing trend, and I applaud it. I think also in the social entrepreneurial area, I think we may have a role to play there. Not so clear to me, but I think it's something we could uh, uh, foster eventually. So some questions here about your tech transfer organization. Do you have in-house legal in your tech transfer office, or probably not? You have a in-house lawyer for the institution. You want to develop a good working relationship with that office and with the people there. Uh, you need to have the authority, the tech transfer office has to have the authority to retain and manage outside lawyers. And here's a critical part. We just got through talking about the tech manager pivotal role. What's the focus of their time? I've run into tech transfer offices in which the tech managers spend all their time analyzing. That's all they do. They analyze and analyze and analyze. Well, guess what? That nothing's going to happen. You have these perfectly analyzed inventions, but nobody picking them up and licensing them. So your outcomes are zero. Um, and we have to balance our analysis with our marketing activity and uh, our relationship management with our inventors, with potential licensees and entrepreneurs. So I would just say to all tech transfer directors, look at your tech managers and work with them to find the right balance of spending time on new inventions. Remember, two per month maximum if you can. Uh, Time spent cultivating would-be and in would-be inventors and real inventors who have submitted analysis, evaluation, and triage, and marketing, and of course negotiations. Um, how about a budget for business development and tech marketing? Should probably be there. We know that tech marketing and business development is important for the success of the tech transfer office. So we probably ought to put aside some money so that tech transfer, the tech managers can go to conferences, for example. And then what is the funding mechanism for the tech transfer office? You'll hear me say that for sustainability of a tech transfer office, there should be some dedicated sharing of revenue for the tech transfer office. As I said, in the US, the standard model is one third, one third, one third, one third to inventors, one third to the tech transfer function, and one third to the university. Um, and then I'll finish with this that oftentimes to be creative, you might want to share some administrative infrastructure with other departments. Um, that's a possibility. It's got its advantages, its disadvantages. Um, Hire, train, retain the right people for the job, hire people with a demonstrated will-do track record, and attitude is important, maybe more than aptitude. Okay. The business development mindset, proactive, creative, interpersonal skills with a high emotional intelligence, EQ, optimistic, resilient, and resourceful. And I'll end on this. I like to hire people that have a sense of humor because I think sense of humor is one of the great gifts of humanity. And I think this profession is just ideal for a sense of humor of the right touch, of the right sort. The more you use it, the more deals you'll do, the more inventors will be happy, the more you'll enjoy your job. Okay, let's end there for our first session.
Thanks, Dr. Cahoon. I'll request you to kindly unshare your slide deck so that my colleagues can share the QR code for the today's quiz, as well as I would request my colleagues to put the link for the quiz in the chat box, please. Maybe we can reduce the time to 3 minutes so that we can spend more time in the question and answer, because we have many questions in the chat box which people are eagerly waiting for the answers.
The link is on the chat box as well. Yeah.
We have started getting responses, maybe a couple of more minutes, and then we can start with the Q&A for this session. I've posted the link again. If Dr. Cahoon, if you're ready, we can start with the question and answer. People,
Sure,
almost
I'm ready.
most of them have done it. Yeah, yeah. We can stop
Start.
sharing the screen, please.
Okay, Nick, I have some questions, and there are quite a few over here. But I'll just wanted to start with one from me, and then we can begin with the rest of the questions as well. You
Sure.
mentioned about assignment and the general advice of do not sell. I just wanted to sort of point out an observation that this assumes that the university which is licensing will ensure that it is taking care of the patents all through the life of the patents. There are no surprises for the licensee. And also, that is something which we find very often, especially in the startup world. Investors are not willing to take a risk with, right? Especially in developing countries where some of these mechanisms are still developing, evolving, and and there's no I mean, it's difficult to pin down universities with liabilities for failing to maintain patents and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So, have you had such experiences as well?
Yeah, I'm a realist, and I understand that if we have a situation where the university is the owner but doesn't really have the capability of managing its patents, that's a problem. That's an inherent problem, and we need to figure out a way to solve that. The other thing that you correctly mention is that oftentimes investors of a startup or existing companies will say, well, you're not capable. You don't really know what you're doing. You don't have the experience we do in terms of managing patents. I understand that, and that can be very true, especially in the early stages of an IP office. What I would say as a middle ground is to say, okay, we're going to retain ownership, but we will, with you as the startup and the investors playing their board role or their advisory role, and with the licensee, we will share with you management responsibility of the patent management. And I would do this. I would put this. So there were times when companies would say to me, "Well, we want to make sure that it's we're doing our due diligence to make sure that the patent prosecution process is being effectively managed by you. How can you assure us that that will be done?" I go, "Well, I will put in the contract, in the license, that we are obligated to share with you on a timely basis all communication with our patent lawyer, with the patent office, and you will have uh, we will manage it. I will say this, I will retain veto power over decision making because we're the owner. That said, I will endeavor to make sure that we manage this very much collaboratively." And most of the time, they'll be fine with that. So that would be the hybrid I would suggest.
Let me move quickly to the questions and try and cover as many as I can. Gautam Panda has a
Okay.
question discussing some specific examples of technology transfer would be helpful. I had replied to him saying we won't be covering as much here today, but we will have an opportunity to do it later. I suppose I'll leave this question aside for a moment and go to the next one.
Yeah.
Mahesh Sitagiri has a question. Please share examples where unconventional TTO models such as virtual or outsourced TTOs have worked well? And if so, what made them successful?
So alternative models, there have been, I think in the early stages, I'll take the US, for example, early stages of the tech transfer function. Universities did not have the infrastructure, they did not have the personnel, so they outsourced a lot of their tech transfer function to organizations like Research Corporation, which I think Ashley mentioned a couple of days ago. Research Corporation, I'm trying to think of the others. There were a couple of others, companies that would engage in the tech transfer function for universities. It worked reasonably well for certain technologies. And one thing about these outsourced companies, they select which ones they'll work on and which ones they won't. And what we found was that over time, it kind of leaves a bunch of inventions kind of orphaned one way or another. So gradually over time, people began to realize that having outsourcing a lot of this activity, certainly you shouldn't outsource the relationships with the inventors and potential inventors. I think gradually over time, all universities realized they needed to bring it in-house.
Mhm.
Um, So I don't think there's I can't think of any model now where the basic functions of tech transfer at a university are outsourced. Um, that said, I think there have been some successes in terms of sort of outsourcing in a sense in tech transfer in other countries. That's something we would do frequently in the US. I was always looking for opportunities in India, for example, and we would find entities in India who could do the tech marketing, finding licensees, and then working with us to sign licensees to a license agreement. So outside of our country, there was a fair amount of outsourcing, and we would even be quite generous with the sharing of revenues with our partners in other countries.
Yeah, and I
Those are the
think
only ones I can think of right now.
no, there are models in India too, like in RDC, for example. But I mean, that's something which is happening. But as you said, any outsourced partner will have to do some amount of cherry picking in terms of technologies, and typically, their institutions have their own agenda, whereas
Yeah,
businesses have to run as outsourced businesses. So that does create some
yeah.
issues all the time. Manoj Tripathi has a question. What is the ideal size of a TTO team which can deal with all functions as outlined in slide 1 for effective functioning?
Yeah.
Can I just add a little bit here? I think some of your comments, Dick, were um, focused on a case management approach of tech transfer offices. In India, there are many
Yeah.
situations where people are specialists. They only handle the IP, they only handle the deal making, and so on. So just keep that in mind when you're discussing this, please.
Sure, and I understand that. I think that I've seen that model where a lot of these functions are distributed through a team, and even in my model that I talk about with the tech manager relies upon different specialists. The tech manager relies upon the IP coordinator and relies upon the tech marketing assistant in the case of the CTL model. I do think it's a problem if there isn't some overall coordinator. I think that and I've seen this over and over where tech transfer offices will have these distributed models. And I always want one person that kind of knows how everything is going on that one technology. I'm a believer that that's key. Now, how you would do that in a model that's so distributed, I think that's possible. And again, I'm not trying to say that the tech manager has responsibility for doing everything. They just have responsibility for coordination of everything. And particularly the relationship with the inventor. And particularly, I think if you need to have, in my view, that the management of the relationship with the inventor and management of relationship with the licensee, at least initially, I think that should be done by the tech manager, not by a committee.
What's the ideal size of a TTO team?
So the ideal size, I mentioned this rule of thumb of no more than 2 new invention disclosure cases per tech manager per year. So that gives you sort of a sizing,
Per
what's the
month. Per
throughput?
month. I think
Per
it's per
month,
month.
yeah, right.
Yes.
2 per month, so 24 per year. So you do the math and say, well, if I've got 50, then I should have 2 tech managers minimum. So that's kind of how I size the tech manager role. And then ideally of those 2, let's say in this scenario of if we have 50, we got 2 tech managers and we have a director. And the director, now it's ideal where the director doesn't have any tech cases either to manage. I always had some. And so I think it's normal for a director to have some cases that they manage, but the director, you really need to have somebody who's dealing with a lot of the higher level issues, strategic issues, the dealing with management, dealing with problems, and there's always going to be problems that arise. So depends upon the throughput of inventions. For the scenario I just painted of, say, 50 invention disclosures, I would say, and this is all flexible, but I would say 2 tech managers, a director, and then maybe, 1 or 2 support staff.
Mhm. I think, Pragnya, give me a couple more minutes, please. There is a question of from Darpan Salunke, which is about what would you recommend as a structure for the Indian innovation ecosystem? I know this requires a discussion, but since you've been engaging with some of the RTTOs, maybe you want to give a quick comment on that.
Yeah, that's a big question. Not easy to answer that because ecosystem means complex, right? It's a lot of different actors, it's a lot of different interactions, and it has different scope. There's very local, there's regional, there's countrywide. This is an ideal, I think, subject matter for when we're together face to face and really talk for maybe an hour about this Indian innovation ecosystem. It's such a rich subject. Um, I I guess I would just say, just sort of in a cursory way, that the RTTO, the Tech Transfer Office of an institution, should take seriously its responsibility for being a participant and to engage in the innovation ecosystem, to step back and look at the overall ecosystem and go, what role am I playing? Am I being effective? What can I do to improve that participation? Should I host more events? Am I reaching out to the right players? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is a question on policies, which I will not take up right now, but I just wanted to pick up another question, which is relating to especially the enforcement. Uh, in your contract monitoring and management, do you also, have an activity which relates to IP policing and enforcing those rights?
Absolutely. And what I hinted at during my presentation, that we made mistakes. And so I learned, there's no better teacher than a failure and then rectifying that failure. We had been ineffective in developing a system for very proactive management of our licenses. We grew fast and our systems didn't keep a pace in terms of managing and monitoring. And what we found was, suddenly we found these license agreements that had been ignored for years. And that presented some very large problems, internal, external. So we learned, what are we going to do to fix this situation? So it was multi-level solution. One was, when the agreement is signed, first of all, you design your agreements. You design your agreements to make them easier to monitor. There are ways to do that, to make them easier to put into a spreadsheet so that things are flagged and it's easier to monitor them. So that's one thing. And little things like, the minute they are signed, we put them in front of the contract manager and say, do you understand it? You talk to the negotiator to make sure that we capture all the right terms, etc. You also put in things in the agreement that require proactive reporting by the licensee. Also, little things like, we would get these royalty reports and they were a mess, hard to interpret. You couldn't read them. And so we started giving everybody a standard template. And so we attached to every license agreement a template. This is how you report. And auditing mechanisms. So there's a whole set of things that you do in the agreement itself, and then things that you do as far as setting up the system and the people who implement it. Yeah.
The previous question was from Dr. Indrani Ghosh, but that last question, I'll just combine 2 questions, one from Shweta Mishra and one from Manoj Tripathi, which basically is, when you say review as a TTO and invention, and you decide that it's not inventive enough, or you don't want to take it ahead, or you have some suggestions for them to work on and come back, right? How do you deal with it? What are the types
Yeah.
of things you do to manage that process? And are people willing to listen? Are they willing to work on it? And inventors come back.
Yeah. And that really is one of the key, one of the critical skills as a tech manager, as a tech transfer professional, is the art of rejection. I mean, we have to reject. I mean, I'm telling you, one of the things I've said, and I will say it over and over, is that we have to be selective. Some of them are not viable. I don't mind taking risky technologies, but they have to have some viability IP wise and implementation wise. So how do you deal with the fact that you're going to have to reject? You're going to have to take an invention and go to an inventor and say, we're not going to pursue it. And there's really bad ways to do it. And what I usually tell people is I say, well, first of all, when you meet new parents uh, and you see they have a little baby, and you look at that baby, no matter what the baby looks like, you say, oh, isn't that a cute little baby? You would never say, wow, that's not a very good looking baby. Haha. You would never say that. Why? Because you will offend the parents. So similarly, inventions are brain children of their inventors. And so you don't say the baby's ugly. You say, interesting technology. Now, I've done my homework on it and I'm open to discussion, but here's the reasons. Here's what I've done to evaluate it, and here are the reasons that I believe it's not viable. And you have a discussion with them, and you say, if you can give me alternative, maybe I've got it wrong. Let's talk about it. But here's the IP problem. Here's the market application. Now, it's always nice if I've got some feedback from someone in industry and I say, here's the problem. Here's the fight. We can't scale this, whatever the issue is. So I say, I really like this invention for its creativity, and I commend you for your creativity. Keep it up. Here's why we're not going to pursue it. Now, maybe you're going to improve it, maybe, and I'm always happy. I'd like to keep in touch with you. So if you handle it well, they will come back to you. The inventors will come back and go, something you said, I really appreciated that. Well, I've modified, here's a new invention disclosure. That happens all the time if you're diplomatic and if you're careful and if you respect them for their creativity and you respect them enough to tell them why you've decided not to pursue it.
Yeah. I think we'll stop here and continue with the presentation again. I'll let you, Richard, take over. Yeah.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
Thanks, Premnath.
Yeah.
All right. Carrying on. Okay. So we just did this one, this slide, where I talked about, the kind of people that you try to hire and retain. Attitude being more important than aptitude, I think. It's great. Ideally, they come with both. And I say this business development mindset is really the key. People being proactive, creative, good interpersonal skills, optimistic, resilient, resourceful, and have a sense of humor. And here's the bottom line is there's never enough time. We're always too busy, and we all suffer from this, and it's a fact of life. We just have to deal with it. So since there is never enough staff and never enough time, there's always too much to do for the staff we do have. We want to be careful and we want to be thoughtful about how and where we invest our time. Okay, so I think this is an obvious thing, but I guess I would recommend that you step back every once in a while. I'd step back and go, how am I spending my time? Now, sometimes it isn't under your control completely. That's for sure. You're getting phone calls. I remember frequently, and maybe some of you can relate to this. I would, before my day started, I'd make a list of those 10 things I wanted to accomplish that day. And I come and I sit down in at my desk and I get the first call. The receptionist says, Dick, Professor Webb is on the phone, wants to talk to you. Of course, I take the call. I always take the call. Take the call. Next thing you know, I've got another call, and then another call, and then I forgot this, and there's a little fire that needs to be put out, so to speak. And by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I look at my list of 10 and I haven't done any. So that happens. I understand that. So you have to be strategic. You have to really think, step back and look at how you're investing your time. Are you spending too much time in invention analysis versus marketing? I always had to force myself to make sure that I was dedicating enough time to tech marketing. And I would tell my staff more good deals rather than fewer perfect deals. This is what I tell my tech managers. You could spend a whole year perfecting a one license agreement if it's complicated enough, if it's if there's enough value potential, et cetera. You could spend a year in companies you might be able to do that one big deal. Well, we don't do it that way in a typical tech transfer office in the public sector. I want more good deals. In other words, don't sweat every single detail. If you think it's a pretty good deal, I will sign it. I don't need a perfect deal. Okay. More good deals, fewer perfect deals. Always be working towards efficiency. Be as efficient as you can. Okay. Now, I say be efficient because I do like to use some time for personal relationships. You should have a good working relationship with people in the office. Take time to smell the roses a little bit. Find out how people's personal life is. My tech managers, your personal life is important. Take care of it. And if you let me know if you need anything as far as your personal life, you need to take some time off, that's fine. We, and with inventors, I like to take time to get to know them as individuals. I want them to know me as a person. So I don't mean we should take humanity out of this. I think we want to bring more humanity into it. But that said, I want to be efficient. Okay. Never forget these key relationships, inventors, potential existing licensees, inventors in particular. Um, I guess maybe I got some of this from my father. My father was a medical doctor, and he had the talent, and he taught me about it, which is to make sure that every patient feels like when you are with that patient is the most important person in the world to you. And I had a patent attorney, he just retired last year. I worked with him for many, many years. He had a talent of making me always feel like I was his most important client. Uh, Between us, I'm not sure I was or we were, but he sure made me feel that way. Same thing with your inventors, regardless of the invention. And we're going to talk about this, that there are inventions that are really important, and then there's some inventions that aren't so important, clearly. But that said, every inventor that you work with should feel like you are there completely focused on them. So we really focus on helping each individual inventor. I love inventors. I think inventors are they're the greatest humans in a lot of ways. I mean, they're almost saints, not exactly, but uh, maybe we should have sainthood for inventors. Um, Evolve to task differentiation. So gradually over time, as you grow, you can start bringing on more staff to assign certain areas of expertise. So, for example, at Cornell, one of the first hires that I made was someone who would handle our veterinary medicine college. So we had someone who was dedicated to that veterinary medicine college. That's what they did. All right. And sometimes I want to hire people who do nothing but physical sciences, or these days, more and more IT, computer science, IT. All right. So gradually over time, an office will evolve to task and discipline differentiation. And as Premnath was saying, models where you have someone who handles all the IP coordination, somebody who handles marketing coordination, maybe somebody who handles startups. So I think there is some value in having those kinds of differentiations, as long as I still believe very strongly that there should be one person who's kind of uh, let's call him the CEO of the invention, right? The invention and the process of shepherding it through the whole process. Never lose responsiveness. Always use efficient communication. One of the things that I point out to people is that as a tech transfer professional, stay responsive. People, inventors or would-be inventors, do not like it if you are silent too long. And here's, again, one of the things I learned from my father as a medical doctor. Patients would call him and would leave a message. And even if he didn't have an answer, he would get back to them, because if you don't tell people and you're radio silent, they worry and they get anxious, and pretty soon their confidence in you diminishes. So I just learned early on that all you do is you say to people, I'm working on it, don't have an answer, I hear you, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. That takes care of 90%. And you can then take the time to, work on it and finally come back with an answer. But don't just stay silent because you don't have an answer, because that will really annoy inventors and others, potential licensees, et cetera. Don't neglect the public relations side of things, outreach and promotion. Now, I did in the first few years at Cornell. I thought that as long as we had really good relationships with inventors and we did a really good job of invention analysis, evaluation, assessment, and selection, and good relationships with inventors that where we've rejected, and good management of IP and good marketing and good license negotiations, everything would be fine. And what I learned over time is you really need to promote the function of tech transfer, IP-based tech transfer. You need to promote it. You need to make people aware of it. You need to tell some of the success stories. You need to get some of your inventors who have been through the process and have enjoyed the process, get them out there talking to others on campus. So promote it. You have to. I wish I'd learned earlier that was important. I guess that was just one of my blind spots. We ended up doing things like creative things, like we had a program called IP and Pizza. IP and Pizza. And what that meant was once a month we would go to a different department on campus and we would buy the pizzas. We'd bring pizzas, and we would have it would be around later in the afternoon, mid-afternoon, and bring the free pizzas. And we'd have a discussion, a little lecture. Maybe one of our patent lawyers would come, or one of us would speak, or maybe one of our inventors might speak about the process of IP tech transfer, interesting stories, and then we'd eat pizza. And boy, did we get the graduate students. Yes, because nothing brings graduate students in like free pizza. And so we would get invited to department meetings to make presentations, and we would have various events. So I suggest you do that to inspire people and tell the whole TTO story. Now, let me also say one thing that will make a huge difference in your attempt to inspire inventors and inventorship. If I, excuse me, if I went out to my campus at Cornell and I said, come bring your inventions to the tech transfer office because we will make you rich, there's a good chance we will make millions of dollars for you. I will get about 20% of the inventors who will be excited by that and will bring me inventions. 20%, that's very much the minority. I will get 20% who will say, I'm not interested at all. I think that's a bad idea. That's terrible. I don't know. It's wrong. I don't want to hear I don't want to be involved. The 60% in the middle will be like, well, okay, I'll make some money, but that's not why I'm doing this. So I'll get a range of opinions. But if I stand up there and I say, bring me your inventions because my office might be and often is the best and only route to see your ideas, your inventions turned into reality. If I say that, do you know what percentage of people will respond positively? I'm talking about a university campus. 100%. Every inventor I've ever met says, oh man, yes, I want my invention to be invested in and developed and be out there solving problems. That's why I'm so excited by it. So that's your message. Not we're going to make a lot of money. No, it's about we're doing this because we're going to get your technology out and invested and developed, and you'll be able to see it, and it'll be solving problems for humanity and the planet. Okay, how to manage the situation where you never have enough time. Number one, you got to triage and select only viable technologies. Like I said, 50%. If that tech transfer office is selecting 75%, we have a problem. And certainly if it's 100%. Why is that a problem? Because people are going to be managing every invention you choose to pursue now as a management obligation. And if you are managing not only potential, let's call them winners, potential success stories, and those that never will be, you're wasting a lot of your time. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's the fact. And I'm just talking about those that have a reasonable chance to be licensed because they're viable. They have a property control position viability, and they have potential market application or implementation. Now, one of the things I also want to mention here, and that is I talk a lot about commercialization because commercialization is the driving force for most of our inventions. Company picks up a license and turns our inventions, our patents into products and services, selling those, and they make a profit and we get a share through royalties and license fees. That's called commercialization. However, there are some inventions, particularly for those of us in the public sector research institutions, which commercialization is beside the point. These are humanitarian and philanthropic inventions that will help humanity and help the planet. Those we need to figure out how to implement, even though commercialization is not the primary pathway. Okay, so I just want to make that clear to everybody. I think those of us in the public sector, research institution, tech transfer office have an obligation not to abandon those technology. And I can give you examples right now. I won't. If you really want me to, I can give you examples where my office took on the challenge of trying to implement. So you'll hear me talk about technology implementation when commercialization is not the primary path, where you're working with not-for-profits, where you're coming up with other mechanisms to see investment happen and development of your inventions. Okay. You don't have enough time, so you need good support systems and obviously administrative staff to help with invention disclosures, IP management contracts. Manage your time. It is your most valuable asset, and do not waste it. That again, just to say don't waste it, doesn't mean you're just nose to the grindstone all the time. Take time to enjoy the personal relationships, developing rapport with people. Maybe don't talk about business every single second. Get to know people and their personal lives a little bit, just enough so that people think you're interested. They know you're interested in them beyond them and their production of inventions, sort of thing. Understand your role as facilitator, promoter. Remember, as a catalyst, you're looking at how I can touch. What are the few things I can do that will move this technology forward? I've written business plans. I've written proposals. I don't have the time to do that for inventions. I don't have the time to write a business plan for any of my inventions, really. I have the time to assist, advise, guide a business plan writer who is an entrepreneur. I can help them with that. I can give them some advice, but I don't have the time to write it. So I'm a catalyst, right? Obviously, have a reference system, have a good system for tracking your inventions. Okay, and then, as I mentioned earlier, leverage your efforts by getting others to help in inventors and department staff. Others will be helpful for you in various ways. The Tech Transfer Office, you can find allies around campus. So a few other key comments here about managing your time as a tech transfer office, as a tech manager, where there's never enough time. In each of our portfolios, and at one point at my peak, I had about 450 cases I was managing. Now, it took me years to build up to that level, and I had a lot of support. I had administrative staff. I had departmental managers who would help me, and I had to be good at delegating and so on. That said, in my 450, there was a segment which required a lot of attention for a period of time, and then those were the ones that I was marketing and negotiating licenses for, and then I kind of back off a little bit when it's contract monitoring because I've got a staff to do that. But in everybody's portfolio, certain inventions naturally take some precedence. And this is, I don't go out and tell inventors this. I don't say, oh, by the way, your invention is not really that important to me. I would never say that because that's really a bad thing to say. As I said, treat every inventor like they're the most important client you have when you're working with them. Focus on them, give them the best advice you can at the time you have with them. But the fact of life is there are going to be some inventions that naturally take some precedence. New invention disclosures are always of a priority because we got to determine what are they, what is their, we have to assess them, their IP quality, their commercialization viability, are they philanthropic, humanitarian implications. These maximum two new invention disclosures per month per tech manager. Okay. You have to work on them because you may have a ticking time bomb in that we may lose rights because of publications coming. You got to work on those. Those which we have filed but have not licensed, those have the highest priority. Those are the ones that bother us. We need to take action on them today. We're spending money on them. We have not found a licensee. What are we doing today to enhance its chances? And those that have been filed but licensed, yeah, we can relax. Now it's our contract monitoring system. That's fine. I can take that's why I had 450 because half of those, they're already licensed and I'm really not doing very much anymore. Now, in each portfolio, some technologies are more valuable and deserve more time. That is also a fact of life. And those of you who've done this somewhat, you know what I mean. And that is you get some technologies that are going to have major impact in certain global applications, global industries. It has the real potential to have major impact. Doesn't mean we ignore others. It just means that they may take a little more precedence and we'll give it a little more time because we know it's a potential cure for viral disease around the world. That's something that's really it deserves maybe a little more time if you have to choose between am I going to work on this one versus that one today versus some that are they're just not, for various reasons, maybe they don't rise to the same level of impact. So that's all reality. Now, I wanted to
Can I
show
just interrupt,
yes, Pranav.
Richard? Yeah, we're going to run out of time, so maybe you can prioritize a few slides, right? And then we can take it up later
Yeah,
as
let me
well.
see.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can take it up later. Let me do this one. How much time have we got?
um,
Are we out of time?
yeah, we are.
Zero?
No, but I think you can take 5-10 minutes if you think that
Let me
will
take
help.
5 minutes and wrap things up
Sure,
then. That would be good.
please. Yeah, thank you.
So let me go through this very quickly, kind of just to say, I'm going to step back for a second and leave you all with this. And that is, years ago, people ask me, please describe the IP tech transfer system because it's got multiple components. And so what I did was I created uh, a pie-shaped structure. And so I'm going to show you that. And all of these are important. And if you don't have these elements, you need to consider uh, obtaining those. Okay, so the first one is IP policy. We've talked about that. If you're going to have, that's the foundation. So you need to have a strong, effective IP policy. You need to have an industrial partnering policy. When companies, private sector, funds work at the institution, how are inventions handled in terms of ownership, in terms of licensing? You need to have some kind of a system for tech transfer office governance, organization, and operation. We've been talking not about governance today, but certainly about some organization and operations. An invention disclosure system, which we've been talking about today. Nothing is more important. That's how you harvest the wheat. Okay. An outreach, in-reach, PR, TTO marketing. So you're actually marketing the tech transfer function. You're promoting your office. This is something that ultimately long-term sustainability requires that you do this. Okay. Tech evaluation triage. I spent time talking about that today. You have to be assessing your inventions and selecting the ones that are viable. IP management. Clearly, we have to know how to file and how to manage outside patent counsel, how to make the decisions. We don't have to be IP lawyers, but we have to know how to direct IP lawyers in the decisions that have to be made. Tech marketing, nothing more important, the promotion of our technologies proactively and creatively. The practice of having a license template that's viable, that works for your institution, for your in-house lawyers are okay with it. Your understanding of what terms you can negotiate, the term sheet development, the use of the term sheet and negotiating win-win terms, how to design license agreements, and then finally license contract management, the monitoring and the management. Now I'm going to finish with a very quick quiz, very quick, just one question, and that is, I made this pie chart years ago, and I like it, and I haven't had anybody, disagree with it, like, oh, you're missing some parts, because I think if you raise issues, I can tell you where I would put it. But there is one thing that's missing here, and I will just ask you all to tell me what is the key thing. It took me, I don't know, 2 or 3 years of using this in lectures before it finally hit me that I was missing something. Can you tell me what that is?
Answers in the chat box. Somebody
Do
says
we have any answers?
valuation, technology, BATNA, negotiations, awareness, arbitration,
You might have said it.
empathy-driven impact, commercialization, IP audits,
And
relationship management, inventors. I think you're
yeah,
getting a lot of
and
words here.
a lot of things. And the fact is probably all of these are good answers, and they fit in here into these various sectors. That said, the one that looms, and you may have said it, I'm not sure, but the one that is so obvious, and that is, you got to have good technologies. We can have all this system we want, but if we don't have inventions coming in, then none of this matters. So obviously you need to have technology. Yeah. So with that, I guess I'll end.
I think, Richard, maybe you can just give a quick glimpse of what we missed, and you wanted to talk about your course.
Oh, yeah,
Briefly.
sure. Let me just see. What did we,
And the slides will be available to our participants, so we'll get to see it later.
I will make I will make the slides available, and let's just see. Yeah, I might have a hard time going through just to see what we've missed. Let's see.
I think you
These are more.
maybe sure. You can go to the.
What were you going to say, Premi?
I think you can talk about the course that you wanted to talk about as well.
Yeah, so yeah, let's do that. Let me stop sharing there for a moment and just say that I will send the slides. And if you go through those slides, or they will be sent to you, the slides, and go through, and if you have any questions, send them to Premnath and his team of organizers. They will make sure I have them and can respond to them. And also, we will be getting together again, and certainly face to face when I'm there in June, and we can talk about all these things too. I don't want to ignore those other slide content. Let me just tell you very quickly, I was asked now a couple of years ago by various people at Cornell to put together a certificate course through Cornell's online educational arm called eCornell. So eCornell produces courses, certificates, and the like. They run workshops and so on. And so they asked me to create a certificate, which I did. It's all recorded. It's called Invention and IP Management. It's somewhat like the course I teach at Cornell. The idea is it's 6 modules, and you pay the tuition, and it's online. I'm recorded, but it has a coordinator, and there's case studies, etc. All 6 modules, you successfully take those, you get a certificate from Cornell in Invention and IP Management. And it's designed for those in both public sector, like a TTO, as well as those in companies, whether they are in an existing company and an innovation management role, product development role, or entrepreneurs. So anybody who would like to know more about it, send me, maybe, let's see, how best can they communicate with me? Do they have my email, or?
We can send it to them on the chat
Send my
box. Yeah.
email, and if anybody wanted to know about it, more about it, I'm happy to tell them more. So,
Okay, great.
and
So I think
yeah.
I'll hand it over to Pragnya to do the last quiz for today,
Yeah.
and then we'll go ahead.
Can we have,
Yeah, please go ahead.
can we have the next quiz QR code on the screen, please, and the link in the chat box?
It's on the chat box already.
Yeah, on the screen as well. Maybe we can finish in 2 minutes, and then if there are few questions left, we can have those quickly. We've started getting responses.
Is Vic online?
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
Vic, how much time would you have, if at all, for taking up a few questions?
You know, 10,
Okay.
10,
So I
15
can take
minutes.
them. Okay, sure.
Okay. Yeah,
I'll try and take a few more questions from the ones which have
sure.
come online. And I
Okay.
think in the meantime, uh, so you can unshare this, please, Pragnya, if you're okay.
Yeah.
Shall we go ahead with this? Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead with the questions. Uh, there's a question from Soumya Tiwari. It says, to what extent should universities support university-based spin-offs with funding for marketing and business development efforts?
Well, first of all, I think that, in my view, universities should be supportive. The more we can be supportive in various ways to to startups in general and spin-offs in particular. Spin-offs meaning, you know, that it's the initial management comes in large part from the personnel of the institution. I think we should be supportive. I think there are a lot of things we can do. I think there are things probably we should be careful about doing. Uh, I'm a believer that the university ought to think about creating a seed fund. I think that's a good idea to help you know, technologies get to the point where they could be licensed. I think that's a good idea. The the university, we typically had not really gotten involved in investing in our own technologies. Um, I think that's not a bad idea. Oxford does it. Oxford has a big investment fund that it's publicly traded. It's a big investment fund that invested in Oxford technologies. I think that maybe is a goal to shoot for. That is a little a kind of a little scary aspect to it. I would be happy if the university would simply maybe defer patent expense, would take equity in lieu of license fees, would be very helpful in terms of allowing the startups to rent space at let's call them discount rates sort of thing. Um, I don't think that I think the tech transfer office should be involved in perhaps making introductions to investors, et cetera. But I think we have to be a little careful about how much time and money we would put into startups.
There's a question from Prasoon Gupta about, uh, let me rephrase it saying, is it a good idea that we should engage with industry before filing a patent to enhance the technology's economic prospects?
Quick answer is yes. I first of all, as a tech manager, and there are aspects to it as a director as well. I was always cultivating relationships with industry, different industries, certainly industries in which I knew I was going to be seeing multiple inventions coming out of Cornell. You know, take the vet school, for example. There were going to be certain kinds of inventions coming out, and I would cultivate relationships in companies in the vet therapeutic and diagnostic space. So I was always cultivating those relationships, and I would use them informally. I would pick up the phone and call someone and say, "Hey, off the record, what do you think about? I'm not, you know, we're not going to sign an agreement, a non-disclosure agreement here. Let's just talk informally about this. What do you think?" And I'd get a lot of feedback that way. I also would try to market technologies. Um, Now you got to be sophisticated in doing this, but I would market technologies before filing by very carefully making sure that I didn't disclose anything um, confidential, and also be very careful to make sure that it wasn't considered to be an offer for sale. So I didn't want to lose any rights, but I would go out and say, you know, I've got something interesting. What do you think? Do you want to talk? And I would get feedback. And if it was positive, then I'd go, okay, we're going to file. And I would get a lot of pre-filing feedback from companies. So I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
Um, any experiences from scaling your operations internationally as a TTO? Mahesh Sitagri's question?
Well, I guess first of all, I would say that at Cornell, unlike a lot of my colleagues at other U.S. institutions, which were very U.S. focused, to the point of being blind to licensing outside the U.S. And I can see why. I mean, our main constituencies are in the U.S., and the U.S. is a big place, and it's relatively easy to license here. That said, I always felt like our technology should be made available to the world. So I was always looking outside, trying to develop partners, um, usually looking for really trustworthy entities in different countries that we could partner with that would be our eyes and ears and help us open doors and help us make connections. So, and that's the key, is to find some entities that would be trustworthy and we could trust, and we felt okay with them kind of representing Cornell to some degree. So, yeah, and India was a place where we actually were able to do that.
Yeah. And I think Cornell has a pretty long history with India, right? With Norman Borlaug
It
and
does.
even Ratan Tata,
Yeah.
right?
Ratan
So that
Tata,
of course
and then we have,
helps. Yeah.
yeah, Cornell
There's
in
a question.
India.
Yeah. There's a question from Dr. Yogesh Dhoble, which basically with regards to inventions coming from undergraduate students and other students, as opposed to the professors and so on. Um, was it? Did the TTO do anything differently to encourage student inventions, and what was there any difference in what are the kind of proportions you saw from students versus uh,
Yeah, good question. So our policy, and I think it's probably reflected in most universities in the US, our policy at Cornell is that Cornell is the owner of any patentable invention made by any personnel. That means any employee or anyone with a research or teaching appointment. And so what that means is that covers faculty, it covers full-time staff, to some degree part-time staff. It also covers graduate students who have either research appointments or teaching appointments. It does not cover undergraduates. And our philosophy always was, well, so at Cornell, undergraduates are paying for tuition. They pay to go. So we think for us, it's not, number one, it's not appropriate for us to own their inventions. Um, and then second of all, would we ever encourage undergraduates to come to us voluntarily with their inventions? We did not take any active steps in that regard, primarily because frankly, most of the inventions we saw from undergraduates didn't really rise to the level of the quality, I'll call it, that we thought was sufficient. That said, of course, were there some? Every once in a while, you would see an invention and it would come to us, and undergraduates would offer it to us, and we might take it on. Rare. That was rare. And so basically, we don't get involved with undergraduates, but they could come to us, and we, on a case-by-case basis, could work with them. And on occasion, there was something of value that they would come up with. Yeah.
Pooja Verma has a question. What are the challenges TT managers face in biological medical inventions in terms of acceptance, biosafety issues, and time consumption in trials?
Well, there's really no area of technology transfer that's um, more complex and more constrained by regulatory issues, by the necessities of trials, laboratory trials, animal trials, human trials, the whole stage of development of clinical trials. So it's a very big world, and one has to really embrace all of it. It's complicated. It's got so many challenges to it. Uh, the the good side of it, the flip side is that in my experience, the companies that you engage with are quite used to working with universities and public sector research institutions. They're quite, I would say, they're very receptive. They're good to work with. That's not true of other industries. I remember the laser industry for some reason filled with nasty people. I don't know what was wrong with them. I don't know what it is about lasers that made them so ornery and angry. But sometimes IT was that way for us, but the physical or the pharmaceuticals, biological, biotech, generally really good quality partners. So we got that going for us. Plus, the profit margins are big, and so there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of money, resources to work with. So it's a complicated area, and some people love it. I personally didn't. When my dad was a medical doctor, I just had it up to here with medicine, and I was like, I'm interested in other things. So my area of my passion was and still is agriculture. For some reason, I just get a real kick out of the agricultural side of things and other biological things. And I've certainly worked on a lot of medical, and I find it fascinating. But I've tended to let others, you guys go be really good at the medical device area and therapeutics and diagnostics.
Yeah, Manoj has a question on KRAs for the business development managers or the tech managers, and who should be assessing it? Who does it
Say
normally?
that, ask that again.
The key, so it's basically the performance metrics for business development managers or tech managers, and who assesses it normally? Who actually reviews their performance?
You mean, so we're talking about the business development, technology marketing,
Yeah, so the question
that's
was
what,
about key results areas, KRAs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have a standard process which says, okay, once you've analyzed the invention, you've understood its inventiveness and its IP, or what I call the property control position, what your asset is and what its value proposition is. Then from that naturally flows, okay, let's find the logical partners, and let's find some of the potential partners that maybe don't immediately come to mind, that we think about a little bit in a more creative mode. And we come up with a list of targets and target companies, and we find the key
Can I
people.
interrupt? Can I
Yeah.
interrupt a little bit? I think the
Yeah.
question was what are the performance metrics for a typical technology manager? In the
Okay.
job, and who assesses it?
Yeah. So tech manager performance criteria. Um, how many inventions they are managing, and we want to kind of have an idea of the throughput that they have to manage. How many invention disclosures are they receiving? How many fresh ones? How many they have recommended filing? What are they managing in terms of the number of patent applications, issued patents? How are they doing in terms of outreach to companies? What is the number of companies that they're contacting per technology, and that's going to vary based on the technology. Bottom line, though, the most important thing is how many license deals did you do? I mean, there's really nothing more important than that. And what are the parameters of that license agreement? Was it exclusive? So if somebody has done an exclusive license, that's different. If they negotiated and concluded a license agreement that's exclusive versus doing 15 non-exclusive licenses. Those are very different kinds of efforts. So my and it's the director. The director would evaluate the performance of the tech managers. I want to know what their marketing activity was, how many inventions they're managing, and how many deals they're able to do in a year.
Ala had a question about there's a percentage of survival rate of patents to commercialize. So I suppose it means how many really get commercialized, and how can a
Yeah.
TTO help improve those odds?
Yeah. So the stats at my 20 years at Cornell was 3,000 invention disclosures received, 1,500, it's almost exactly 50%. 1,500 we filed patent applications and marketed. And of those 1,500, 750 were licensed. So 25% of inventions were licensed. And of that 750, 25%, 650 generated significant revenues, over and above just some patent expense.
So how much is that? The last number?
650 out of the
Oh, that's
750
okay.
generated income.
Mhm.
So pretty good. We always
Yeah,
thought that was pretty good.
yeah, and I think that's well above the US average.
Yeah, I think we spent so much time on thinking about viability and we learned the hard way. And maybe when I'm there in June, I can tell you about the lessons learned about that sometimes things look great and you forgot to ask the question about scale up or something like that you don't find out until later. So we learned over time how to select those that are, as I say, viable, potentially viable. And again, I want to make sure everyone understands I'm not saying we shouldn't invest in risky technologies. I think we should. So even though there's still a lot of questions and the TRL might be really low, if it's got viability potentially, I say let's go for it.
Mhm. There's a question from Yogesh Roble about whether there was any obligation that you needed to publish all your technologies online and then seek expressions of interest, uh, official website, official newspaper, or you could just go to the first person you thought could make the most out of it and strike a deal.
Yeah, for us, it was the latter. We didn't have any obligation, and anything as far as marketing and publication of our technologies available, that was all internally driven by us, by the Tech Transfer Office. We felt we did two things. One was I did always feel that we should make sure that our technologies were as widely I'll say advertised. They were as widely made available in terms of the information as possible. And so we would use not only our own website, but also there were for-profit entities that would put our technology available for licensing on their website for free. We never paid for it. But my job was always to make sure that it was widely distributed globally. You could always find Cornell technologies available for licensing. That said, that was what we call passive marketing. They're available and we have abstracts and titles, and you can find information about the inventions. But we didn't rely on that. What we relied on was targeted, proactive marketing on a case by case basis, where you're reaching out to individual companies and saying, hey, we've got a technology we think you should be interested in because we understand your company, at least what we see online, and we've got a technology that might be a strategic opportunity for you. Would you like to talk? So we did a lot of that sort of thing, and that's how we got most of our good deals.
So, Richard, I'll take one last question. Thank you for giving us so much time. This is from Shovan Ganguly. Basically, the question is about how do you incentivize innovation managers or technology managers to drive uh, projects and technologies which have a lot of social impact, but may not have a great commercial potential. So the monetary benefits to the TTO might be low. How How does
Yeah.
that work? And maybe you have an example or two from Cornell to give.
Well, I mean, this was always something we talked about. Like I have today, I've mentioned philanthropic and humanitarian, and this is something that we just always, it becomes part of your DNA, so to speak. It's what we talk about, and that everybody should find opportunities. Every tech manager find opportunities to develop that side of their portfolio. So we're always encouraging it, and we're supporting, and performance reviews, they get rewarded in terms of compensation enhancement, increased salaries and promotions for not-for-profit approaches, as well as making a lot of money. We didn't really reward people for bringing in lots of money. That is not what we did really. But one thing we did do, and somebody asked me once, well, what should we have a commission system that tech managers could get a little share of the deals that they do. And we gave that a lot of serious thought, and I came away with the very strong opinion that we should not do that. So I was always against that. That said, I did agree, and we did implement a pooling system where we would sort of set some revenue projections, and as an office, if we would hit them, we would take that pool and then kind of divide it pretty much in a bonus fashion to the team, and not just the tech managers, but everybody would get a little bit of share of that. The other thing I would do is, as far as rewarding people as a director, I would reward people by doing things like this. I'd say, okay, all right, I'm talking to you, Premnath. Premnath, you're a tech manager, and I'd say, Premnath, what are your professional goals? And you'd say, well, I'm really interested in learning more about this, or I really want to become an expert in that. And here's one of my professional interests. And I go, okay, you and I are going to develop a plan so that we can realize that for you. So it might mean continuing ed opportunities. You might take courses. You might go travel. I always gave a little bit of travel budget for my professionals to go to certain kinds of meetings, et cetera. So I was always trying to figure out ways to reward people by furthering their professional goals.
Great. So thank you very much, Richard. I think this was a great session. Thank you for sharing your experiences and knowledge. I'll hand it over to Pragna to close the session.
Thanks, Premnath.
Thank you, Dr. Cahoon, for this enriching session. There are so many learnings and takeaways from today's session. I know that we couldn't complete the slides, but those would be shared with the participants. They can send us the questions and we'll convey it to you and get the answers for them. So with this, we come to the end of today's session. But before we close the session, we would like to share with you information about day 4, tomorrow's session by Dr. John Fraser, who will be talking about communicating the impact of TTOs, training and excelling as tech transfer professionals, and IP management for TT professionals.